Welcome to The Victory Show.
Hey, Victors, welcome to this episode of The Victory Show. If this is the first time you're joining us, I'm Travis Cody, best-selling author of 16 books, and I've had the privilege of helping hundreds of business owners, founders, entrepreneurs write and publish their own best-selling books as well. And in that journey, I discovered a really fascinating pattern. A lot of businesses are hitting revenue plateaus, usually around $1 million, and they struggle to break through it. So on this show, I sit down with some of the world's most successful CEOs, leaders, and business owners to uncover the strategies they use to overcome those plateaus and scale their businesses to new heights so you can do the same. So get ready for some deep insights and actionable takeaways that you can implement in your life and business starting right away. My guest today is Tara Kinney. Tara is Vistage speaker and the visionary owner of Atomic Revenue, which I love. Who doesn't want atomic revenue? It's a leading revenue operations consulting firm dedicated to optimizing end-to-end revenue production for small to mid-sized business-to-business organizations. With an expertise in aligning marketing, sales, and customer success through data-driven strategies, operational efficiency, and technology integration, Tara helps companies in engineering, scientific technology, software development, cybersecurity, commercial, industrial, and MSP service industries achieve measurable growth. Not only that, but as a fractional leader, board member, and department manager, she has guided dozens of companies into transforming their revenue operations by refining people, processes, technology, and data to maximize profitability and long-term success. So if you want more profits, boy, oh boy, is this the conversation for you today. Tara, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm going to go shorten that introduction for you. That was a mouthful.
I may have edited it a little bit. I'm a writer. I tweak.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I
You're like,
love
I
this
sound good on
topic.
paper. That's fantastic. So, all right, so we were talking before we started here, and you mentioned something that so Atomic Revenue just hit its 10-year anniversary, which first and foremost, that's amazing. That's a milestone in of itself. But you actually got started in the fractional marketing space a decade ago. So let's talk about that a little bit, because fractional leadership or fractional, CEO, that didn't really seem to start to catch on until maybe a few years ago. So how did you end up there?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take us back even further to when I started working virtually for the first time when we did it with flip phones and fax machines. Can you imagine being the implementer of putting the fax machines in all of your virtual workers' houses?
Was this
Yeah,
post
way back
BlackBerry, or
in
were some of your
2005.
teams still Blackberries with the little keypads?
Right, with the keyboards?
Yeah. BlackBerry thumb was a thing. Only people of a certain age will know what BlackBerry thumb is.
Right, I still have one sitting over here just because I'm gonna hold on to it. Someday it'll be gold.
It's did
Um,
you ever see Iron Man, the very first Iron Man movie, where they take his old heart and they put it in the little glass box, so you're gonna have like your original BlackBerry in the box, like the phone that started it all.
yes. Oh, and there is something nostalgic about thinking back to those days. I was talking to someone else that even knowing about fax machines kind of ages you a little bit.
Cell phones
Oh,
and
but
fax machines. That's a fantastic. I love it.
yes,
So
and
instead
one
of
of the
check your text, it's check your fax.
right. Actually, we used to run marketing strategies because everyone had fax machines, but no one used them anymore. And so you could get a lot of attention by faxing someone a marketing or sales message.
Oh,
Because
that's
all of a sudden, this crazy noise starts happening in the corner of the office, and people are like, "What is that?" And they go over and they read your message. So, direct mail, email didn't get everyone's attention as much as that
that's fan-
awful fax
that's
machine noise in the
fantastic.
corner.
Okay, so we started with Blackberries and fax machines, and that was
Yes.
virtual.
So,
So how, like, because that was like, I mean, was the internet even like able to handle virtual work back then, or was it that's why it was fax machines and phones and email?
yeah, so we did everything by phone. Video conferencing was very difficult and expensive in 2005.
Yeah.
So we did have the internet, but you know, life today is really easy to be virtual. We're a virtual company and we serve clients nationwide. But what you learn by being virtual is that your processes really matter.
Mm,
And people who can help your team put together a great process that doesn't require everyone to be in the same location to do that process is critical for success. And that's actually how I ended up starting the predecessor to Atomic Revenue, where I became a fractional CMO for companies. And at that time, their fractional CMO wasn't a thing. We weren't even talking about the gig economy yet.
Yeah.
So
So when
now we're
digital
way
nomads
past it.
started to get popular about 10 years ago, you're like, I've already been doing this a decade. Oh, I didn't know there was a
Yes.
word for this.
But as a fractional CMO for a cloud computing company, I was really frustrated by the ways that we had to staff our organizations and complete projects in marketing and sales organizations because I don't need to hire a full-time employee or even a part-time employee. I need someone to do a project.
No.
But when you outsource it to an agency or vendor, you kind of lose control and you lose your flexibility to pivot. And especially when you're a small company under 5 million, which a lot of the companies I was working with were small, their priorities change and they need a different set of resources, and renegotiating contracts with vendors all the time was a pretty painful process.
Yeah.
So in cloud computing, I started to ask, why can't we share people and work with them like they're our employees, but just share them across multiple small businesses? None of us need a full-time graphic designer, but, could we all use 10 hours a week of a graphic designer or 20 hours a month of a graphic designer? So I started doing subscription departments
Wow.
and fractional CMO. But what I learned was that when marketing succeeds, a small business has to hire a sales organization to sell beyond the founder.
Yeah.
And that is really where it all falls apart. It was falling apart for me as a business owner because they couldn't hire a sales team that could do what the founder was doing. And then now
Yeah.
the founder is distracted with a new hire trying to help them sell. Meanwhile, all the lead generation efforts that my team is producing are just dying on the vine.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, wait, can you turn off the faucet a little bit?
We're too many leads. Please stop.
Yes. So that's really frustrating because lead generation doesn't work that way. You can't just, crank it on and off
Yeah.
depending on the capacity of your sales organization. So that's really what started Atomic Revenue. We called it Revenue Operations, uniting, people, process, data, and technology for marketing and sales. Found someone who had been building sales operations for a number of companies and said, my clients need someone who can build the sales organization. I can build the marketing organization. Let's start a new company. And Atomic Revenue was born.
Wow.
So here we are now. There's tens of thousands of fractional marketing and sales leaders in the market.
Yeah.
As small business owners, there's a lot of confusion in the market because it all sounds the same. We're all going to help you get more leads. We're all going to help you sell more. Yeah. But, Atomic Revenue still stays true to the operations side of that equation. Is what are the systems and the processes that people are going to do? So you can add people to the process and then scale up the production. And that is, to me, the secret of growing a business. If it's not systemized and it's not repeatable, then you're not going to be able to scale it.
Yeah. I've never heard it put that way before. How do you know if a process works? If you can have multiple teams across different time zones and countries do the same process and get a same result, the process works. I don't know of any of the people I've worked with that they could say that with their processes. It works for the person who did it. So let's, and so that's interesting. And I think that, coming from the marketing world too, I do feel like, especially with a lot of solopreneurs or smaller businesses, right, 4 or 5 employees, there is such an emphasis on marketing and sales because that's what they're good at and that's what they think is making the revenue. And operations almost seems to come in like what that takes care of itself, right? So just from what I'm doing with this book and with this show is, companies are getting stuck at $1 million a year. And from what you just said, it sounds like a big proponent of that being stuck is people aren't focusing on systems and operations. So let's talk a little bit about that. When somebody brings you on, like, do you do an audit on them? And when you do, like, what are the things you're looking for?
So our proven process is to diagnose before we resolve. So we don't just start doing stuff. And so we start with a product called revenue diagnostics. And that looks at an entire company and the process that your customers go through to pay you. So we're looking at their marketing journey, the sales process, contracting, what happens after they buy? How do they keep spending money with you? How do you continue to serve them? And so when we go through that process with businesses, we're really looking for who's responsible for different stages of the process, what's measurable along that journey for your buyers, and where are the bottlenecks?
Mm,
Because at the bottlenecks, we can prioritize, like, if we don't fix this so that more customers can come on board, then there's no point in doing anything before that that increases your number of customers.
yeah.
So while it's frustrating sometimes for clients because they think if I just had more leads, more people would buy from me and my business would grow. We talk a lot about you can just grow out of business because you don't have the operational capacity to serve more customers. And you just burn that bridge.
Yeah. I love it. That's a good title for your first book, Growing Out of Business.
What's funny is I just wrote that down this week, and here's my first chance to use it in
Love it.
public.
Like, that's so contrarian, but most people think, oh, grow is amazing. And you're like, oh, you can actually grow yourself into in non-existence. Um,
Yep.
wow. So when it comes to bottlenecks, how often do you find that the founders are the actual bottlenecks?
Well, if the founders are currently the salesperson, 100% of the time they are a bottleneck. You know, that's where we get into the EOS concept of elevate and delegate, which, I really like for small to mid-sized businesses. It kind of gives us a little framework. But we really have to build a process that allows a founder to get out of parts of the business.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes the founder is going to stay in sales longer because they understand it, but then who is doing the other parts of the business that you used to do? And that's one of the areas that businesses struggle is when the founder's doing the things they love and that they're naturally good at, the rest of it gets ignored and the wheels come off the bus.
Yeah. So with your revenue diagnostic tool, does that then come in that determines where the emphasis for what you're going to focus on first?
Yeah, so we try to prioritize a plan for the next 18 to 24 months with our clients. Um, they're all different sizes, but what's interesting is even the largest and publicly traded clients that we've worked with have the same issues as small businesses. But it's a lot easier to fix the
Smaller.
operations and the issues in a smaller organization. So I know it feels painful to business leaders that are in really small organizations who feel strapped for resources and like they just need to grow past this hurdle and it's taking too long. However, it's a lot easier and faster to make the changes that are necessary. So I hope that's encouraging to folks.
Yeah. So from my perspective, a lot of businesses that get up to about $1 million a year, a lot of times it feels like they almost accidentally do it. So then they get to $1 million a year. The pain is big enough, and they realize, like, oh man, I don't have the skills I need to get beyond this. So when somebody's sort of in that point, let's say they got 3 employees, think the marketing's working, they're getting more than enough leads, right? But there's no systems in place. Where do you start? Where would somebody in that scenario, where would you recommend somebody in sort of that space? What would you look at them in terms of, like, what are the most important systems, and kind of in what order do you want to bring those online in?
Yeah. You need a good accounting and legal process and system
Mhm.
that's repeatable. No one likes to do that, but it's not an afterthought. It's critically important to your business. And while we hope we never have to look at those legal agreements today, from small to large businesses, the legal process within the customer engagement is a huge issue.
Mm,
So I like to start there because it's really easy when you're small to put in place a process of these are the 5 steps that when we have a customer that wants to sign with us, this is how we sign the contract, where it goes, and how invoicing occurs. Once you get that structured, that is a really easy piece to elevate and delegate
mm,
to, an operations admin type of person. So they need you to lead and guide what that piece is going to be, but you can take that right off your plate. So at about $1 million, that was, for me and a lot of my clients, the first thing that we had to get rid of. And honestly, it's the thing we're worst at. Unless you are an accounting or, legal
very few
administrator.
business owners I've met who are also good bean counters.
Right. So, really good first step in getting rid of it. Just get those systems and tools in place and get those off your plate. The next one then is CRM system, which are a million in the market, but you have to have a way to organize your contacts, send emails to people on a broader scale, give yourself reminder tasks of when you need to follow up on things, and start to create some processes around your customer engagement. Because then when you start to hire people in marketing or sales, you can fit them in to the process, and all of the information and infrastructure is there. Um,
Love it.
so many founders even find that by getting a CRM in place, they're able to do more of the work that they're already good at. So I don't want to enable founders to stay in the
Sure.
marketing and sales space longer, but for some people, growing your business to where other people are selling or marketing isn't the goal. Right? You just
Yeah.
want to have more customers if you're a solopreneur or a fractional leader or a business coach. You just want to have more customers for yourself. You're not trying to have more coaches in your business. So, I mean, I think that's something you have to be honest with yourself when you hit $1 million. What are you going to do? Are you going to be a lifestyle business and you just want more revenue streams for yourself as an individual? Or are you going to grow a business that needs to now start investing in scalable processes and systems so that you can hire people to do those things for you?
Yeah. In the work that I've done, working behind the scenes for some fairly significant companies, that was one of the things I noticed, is that the ones that sort of were chaos behind the scenes and almost felt trapped, is they never set a mark of, like, well, when is enough, right? Because they could just make money. And so they're like, oh, I did a launch and we made 3 million. And then 6 months later, like, okay, we're doing another launch, but this time we got to make 4 million. Why? Because last time we made 3 and my reputation, right? And so every time there was this more and more pressure. And I worked with a client one time who, that's what he had. He was doing $1 million a year, had fantastic margins. And it was him and an assistant. And I was like, oh, you could do this and triple your revenue. You could do that. And he was like, what is that going to do to change the current lifestyle that I have? And he was showing me, like, all this stuff. And that was the first time I met someone who was like, why do I need any more? Right.
Yep.
And especially in Western culture, it feels just like, the hustle culture, right? No, got to make more because you can. So that's a good point. So with some of the companies you've worked with, have you identified, like, are there times where you'll do a diagnostics tool with the company, you'll come in and you probably don't say this to them, but in the team, you're like, these guys they're like, that they're not going to last another 18 months because of things that are identified. And if so, what are those things that are kind of like the big red flags that are popping up where you're going like, these guys are never going to be able to scale out of where they are?
Yeah. The biggest red flags are founder owners or leaders that say that they want growth but refuse to let go of anything. it Your baby is not going to grow if you continue to do all of the things for it. So if they embrace that they want to grow the business and they want help figuring out how other people can succeed in doing the parts of the business so they can actually be a leader and not a doer of all the things, then they can grow. But I see a number of leaders who say they want those things, but they refuse to actually let go of anything.
I think
And
you
it's not even that they'll go out of business. It's that their business will be what it is today, which they are miserable and unhappy with what it is today. And it
mm,
will continue to be that for them.
you I think you just coined a new phrase. You didn't say this, but that's just what popped to mind, where when parenting, we have that phrase, helicopter parent, right? They'll never let go of their kids. They're always within. I'm like, now you can put this in your growing out of business book, the helicopter business owner,
Yep.
the
The
helicopter founder.
helicopter
I
founder.
want to be around. I want to grow, but I gotta put my fingers on everything. so
Yes.
so let's talk about some of the successes you've had with Atomic Revenue. What are a couple of your favorite stories of companies you've come in, they've engaged you, and where were they at, and where, by using your processes, where were they able to get to?
Yeah. So I really like small businesses that are around that 5 million to 10 million size.
Mhm.
That's the next hurdle to break through is if you can get from 1 to 3.5, then getting past 5, and then getting to 10.
And
And at every one of those scale points, your operations have to become more sophisticated so that more people can do the business without you.
mm,
So I think that's really important. And we like engineering companies a lot, engineering and science companies. No one likes to work with them, but they really struggle in hiring and marketing and sales. So I love the quantum solution story, which you can read about on our website, and we have case studies published. But they had a business development representative on their team, was the first person after the owner that was hired to support sales and had been on the team for more than 2 years, had never produced a single lead that turned into a sale, was just on payroll. But they didn't want to let this guy go. They were really trying to figure out why no one other than the founder could sell. And so, for that company, we went in, they'd hired marketing companies in the past, so they had a beautiful logo and they had some sales
it's all
collateral,
branding stuff,
but
right?
they were not producing any sales outside of the founder. And so we put in a CRM system, we expanded out marketing to be more sales enablement oriented to
Mm,
help this business development rep who was not an engineer just have conversations to introduce engineering projects to prospects and clients. And then as we worked through the next few years, there were just a number of things that we were able to solve as they came up. You know, that was the low hanging fruit, was how do you get conversations happening that can turn into clients? And then once you start to do that, you start to see, okay, we're really inefficient. Now we have, our sales engineer flying all over the country and completely behind on proposals, bogged down in all of the follow-up from the sales conversation. So
New
how can we
problem.
be more efficient? So then we started geo-targeting the sales campaign. So we're like,
Wow.
okay, so if you're going to go to Sacramento, let's set up 5 meetings in Sacramento. So we're only going to do business development in one location. So then we started to drive down the cost of airfare. We made it so that one sales engineer could sell a lot more volume just by rearranging how the prospecting and marketing was being built to serve the revenue stream. But
That's
they had
they
never
probably like,
succeeded.
wait a minute, we can schedule 5 appointments in one area when we're there instead of going back 6 times. This is genius.
Right. I mean, it's easy for us outside the company to see that that makes sense. But when you're in the operations, you're just going where the business takes you, wherever the
I,
wind blows.
so I worked in Hollywood for 15 years and I did stand-up comedy for a little bit. And I had a good friend who he was making about 300,000 a year as a stand-up comedian, which is unheard of. And we used to joke that he was the richest comedian no one ever knew. And so somebody was asking him like, how are you doing that? Because the average for even today, I think it's 40,000 for a name comedian a year. Those guys are on the road like 270 days out of the year, right? They make 40,000. And he said, he was just like, I just don't understand. He's like, a corporation will book me, and he's like, Detroit. I go to Detroit, and I'm going to be there. And he's like, I will spend the 2 weeks before I go there calling every other corporation. Hey, I'm going to be in town. They're going to, and he's like, and then I'll call every high school and I'll call every college and I'll call every elementary, being like, hey, I can come in for an hour and do a stand-up show. And then, and he would end up 10x in his money off of one job just because
Yep.
he was like, I'm going to be in that area. How do I do it? So that was a poor comparison, but I just reminded me of like that, again, the stuff that seems when you look at it, you go, well, why wouldn't you do that? Sometimes
Yeah.
it's almost like, oh, we, right? It's like, I didn't think we
Yes.
could.
Well, and if you drop your travel time from, 4 or 6 flights a week to go to 2 or 3 different locations, to go to one location and have more meetings
Yeah.
than even you would have had if you had one in each of the locations you went to previously. What that meant was that we did not need to hire another sales engineer.
Wow.
Right? So you're able to scale more efficiently when you identify those ways to improve your operations. And until you're producing something, it's hard to build the infrastructure and build that in, because when you don't have enough leads or opportunities, you're going to go wherever they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why those scale points are so important. But we did set a goal with them. They said, well, what can we expect? It's been 3 years. We haven't gotten a single dollar of revenue from anything we have spent on our business development or marketing team. So what's a goal? And it's always baffles me. It's like, you have no history. There is no proof that, the person who's on your team is going to be able to, produce anything, but let's just set the minimum goal. So I always tell people, like, for every dollar you spend at a minimum, you should get 5 to 6 times return.
Wow.
So I said, now you're hiring atomic revenue, you have the person who's on your payroll, we're having you put in a CRM, we're, expanding out these other expenses that you have. All of those expenses combined become the base. And you have to get 5.5 times that in order for us to even consider this a victory. And we exceeded it. We got more than 6 times ROI in the first year.
Wow.
And it continues to go up because engineering sales timeline is long, like 2-3 years or more, before you'd even get the first sale. So even after that first year, leads that came in that year were selling they're still now coming on as first sales. So it's a great story, but I think it kind of covers all of the facets of growth that a founder-led organization kind of goes through. in order to increase its customer volume.
I love it. So what's the sweet spot then for companies you would like to work with? I think you said 5 to 10 million, but say somebody's reading the chapter in this book or they're watching this show and they think, oh man, we need Tara. What are you guys look for specifically in terms of like a good fit of like who somebody would know, okay, yeah, we're in the window. We could have a shot of going and talking and possibly working with Atomic.
So we like to work with companies who are interested in getting help to take action today and are interested in hiring people to do that work in the future. So very much focused on growth. We are not really a great fit with companies who think that outsourcing is their model. Like, to permanently outsource it defeats the purpose of building an operational infrastructure.
Yeah.
I would just have the infrastructure and do it for you. But if you want to grow your business, building the infrastructure for your company, helping you hire and train people to do it so you don't need us in the future, is the best fit for us. So when we're looking for clients, we're looking for people who admit that they don't know this part of the business, are interested in
That's
growing
the
and
first red
know.
flag. If they don't admit they don't know, then you're like, already, I don't think this is gonna be a good
Yeah.
fit.
Oh my gosh, I have that conversation all the time. People tell me it doesn't work, and then they argue with me that they already know everything about it. I'm like, well, then great. If you already know, then go fix it.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
So, but those are kind of the red flags we look for. The other thing is you have to be able to, you have to be able to invest something. Before you can fly the plane, you have to build a plane.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for companies that are not thinking longer term to make the investment. But we have a client right now, another great story that they're in the middle of a transaction, and the most valuable part of the transaction, they have one client that's valuable to the buyer, and then the sales process and system is the other piece that's being acquired.
Mm.
Because in that B2B, in that case, it's a product development company, but engineering, it all fits the same bucket. Um, the industry as a whole has not cracked the code on how our technical people are not also our salespeople. Well, guess what? The technical people are very good at sales. But your buyers don't want to buy from someone who doesn't know the work that needs to get done.
Isn't it Gino? Is he the one that was like the butts in the seats, right? He's like, you have
Yep.
all of the seats, and he's like, a lot of times there's butts in seats, but nobody stopped to ask, is like, is it the right butt in the right seat?
Yep. Is it the right seat? Yep.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really what, we're looking for is, founder owners or privately held businesses that are looking to grow, and whether they're looking to grow towards a successful exit, or if they're looking to grow to continue to own the company long term and just not have to do all the jobs. That's great for us. They're the expert in what they do and what their business does, and we just want to help them grow and train and hire the experts who do the other parts, and then
Awesome.
you don't need
Oh.
us anymore.
It's fun. It's that's the approach I take when people hire me to help them write a book, because I have a process, right? You don't get to 16 books without having a framework. And I always say that, like, let me demystify the first book. And if I've done my job right, you won't need me for book number 2, because you'll just know the process. You just go back to step 1 and just do it again. Right. That's one of the things that drives me at the ghostwriting space. Like, you hire the ghostwriter and get a book, and then a year later, like, I have a different other book, but I still know what to do. So your revenue diagnostics tool, is that available to anybody who wants to use it, or is that a paid service? Is it only for clients?
So that is a paid service. We do have a free revenue operations assessment. So you can go to atomicrevenue.com. You can start the process. There is a survey there that asks you some questions and asks you to rate some parts of your revenue operations. And then you'll get set up with a free consultation with one of our fractional leaders who will ask you some additional questions and provide you with not only some basic recommendations, but also some insights on prioritization, where to start. Because when you're small, everything seems important. You have
Yeah.
limited resources. So deciding where to start is sometimes the hardest part.
Just having clarity sometimes is 80% of the battle with that.
Yep. And then based on that, sometimes it's to go into revenue diagnostics. That product is ideal for companies that are 10 million plus in annual revenue, just because the outcomes of that process require you to be able to implement it. And if
That
you're
pesky implementation always getting in the way.
I know. And there's so many people out there that provide people with free reports, free strategies, free plans. It's like, but if they can't implement it, then what is the point? So we really try to have our revenue diagnostics deliverables and the implementation plan targeting the resources that a company has in-house and help them identify where they have gaps and where they're going to need additional resources, and help them prioritize what order in which they should do things. So when they're a little bit larger, revenue diagnostics might be the fit. For some of our smaller clients, we start with a digital revenue operations audit, which just kind of looks at, your website, CRM, email, social, and kind of gives you some basics on, are you even just doing the fundamentals well to talk to your market, engage prospects, onboard clients, and then continue communicating with clients? So it still kind of covers the full gamut. And for most of our clients that are especially under 5 million, that is the tool to start with.
You
Because it's
need to
kind of
do.
the foundation.
You guys are gonna say you got to do that, and then you have the emotional support boot camp afterwards. You go through it, and you're like, I'm a mess. What do I do?
Oh, we have had clients pick up and call their agencies in the middle of a digital revenue operations audit and fire their agencies on the spot, like on page 3
Wow.
of the
Just because
report.
they were realizing, like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So
Wow.
a lot of small companies, they get taken advantage of. People come in and try to put big business process or big business systems in place, large advertising efforts. But when you're a small company and you don't have the capacity to sell more, getting talked into a huge marketing and lead generation budget is not going to help your business.
Yeah.
It's going to make
Yeah.
it more painful.
Yeah. I love it. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I always like to end every conversation with 3 personal questions. So we'll wrap it up with
Okay.
these. If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Let's see. I think everything that got me to where I am today is because of the lessons learned along the way. So maybe my biggest piece of advice was to be patient. You know, Life is happening for you and you're learning and you're progressing at the pace that you can, move forward. And even though there were lots of times when I thought it wasn't fast enough to get to my goals or to grow the business, um, I look back on it now and it's the way it needed to be in order to make the business scalable and also give me the quality of life that I want as a business leader. So just be patient, Tara.
Yeah, that's a good one. In my own business, I've noticed that you'll set, the big hairy audacious goal is the big thing, and I realize, like, oh, I'll set these goals, but the impatience for me gets in the way. And I realized if I would have just got out of my own way, the universe was like, well, this was your really huge, scary goal, but you could actually go up here and this is where we're going to take you. So on the way of going to seeing anything scary, and then I got away, I was like, this is way farther than I even thought I could be to. So
Yep.
yeah, that's a good one. What belief or mindset shift has had the biggest impact on your overall success?
Um, I think I'm still going through it, honestly, which is, in order for me to grow my business, I'm now at a stage where I need to move into more board type roles that are less time consuming and, train and increase the expertise of my consulting team so that I'm not doing the consulting work as much. I love the consulting work
I
though.
was going to say, are you having a hard time letting go of some of those pieces?
I am. I was kind of feeling hypocritical a minute ago, but I'm still going through it myself. I've gotten rid of all the other parts of the business, but this, not working directly with clients so that the business can continue to grow is my next step in letting go.
Isn't it interesting? The things you're helping people with a lot of times is your own lessons you've got to get through too. So it's
Yep.
rightfully so, right? So the final question would be, what's the best investment that you've made in yourself?
Hmm. That is a great question. You've got some real thinkers
I'm bringing
here.
the good ones to the end.
Yes. Um, I think the biggest investment I've made in myself is probably boundaries, learning how to set them and how to hold to them. It's really easy to let either your personal or your professional life take over and you don't stay in balance. And it's very difficult to get it back in balance. So
Mm.
for me right now at the stage of life I'm in, I try to limit my travel to once or twice a month. I used to travel a lot and
I'm thinking
um
once or twice a month would be a lot to me.
yeah, and it feels like a lot right now in my life. So I know I need to do it for public speaking or to go to a board meeting. And so that's the phase of my business life, but I cannot let it interfere with the phase of family life that I'm in, where I have two teenagers and,
Uh,
there's a lot of demands
I'll-
at home too. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me. And it's a hard thing for me to teach other people, so I talk about boundaries a
Mhm.
lot, but it's probably been my greatest investment in myself is really
That's a
trying
good one.
to focus
See,
on
I don't
them.
have kids. I have friends that have kids, and I think for my friends it'd be the opposite. Like I have two teenage kids, so I went from traveling once a month to I'm gone 3 days a week. I come home on the weekends. So that's great. For me personally, I found that like the shift into the virtual work where I've got a nice home, and I used to have an office, and then I put my office in the house because I'm like, well, that's the room. Then after a while, I kind of miss the office because there's this weird thing where I'm going to work or I'm closing the office door and I'm leaving work behind. And now, I'll be at dinner, my poor wife, and I'll be like, oh, I forgot to email so and so. And I'll run into my office, and 3 hours later, I'm still in there. So, yeah, the boundaries I've found has definitely been challenging when you decide to do more of a virtual, out of office thing. So, anyway.
It really is. And I've had to set on do not disturb or turn off my phone, pause my inbox. So some of those new technologies are great. Just to say, I am not responding. My Teams is off, Slack's off, you know, not even getting inbox messages. So unfortunately, then people start texting.
See, that's why I miss the old flip phone. I was thinking that the other day. I'm like, I'm tired of my smartphone. Can I just go back to the one where I flip it? As long as it has maps and nothing else, that would be fantastic.
Right.
Ah, the good old days. Well, Tara, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Yes, thank you for having me. This has been fun.